Have you ever created a formula in Excel that works perfectly in one cell, but the moment you drag it down, everything broke? Maybe you wanted the formula to always refer to a one specific cell, like tax rate or a fixed value, but Excel keeps changing the reference automatically. Or maybe the opposite happened. You drag the formula expecting it to adjust, but it didn't behave the way you wanted. That's exactly where understanding relative, absolute, and mixed cell referencing becomes powerful. In this video, I will break down how each one work and when to use them, and how to make your formulas behave exactly the way you intend. We will first understand how cell referencing works in Excel and how formula is translated using cell referencing. So Excel has three types of cell referencing: relative, absolute, and mixed. The normal kind of cell referencing you see in the Excel is the relative referencing. So what does all of this means? Let's see it in the action. Let's suppose you have this data in this matrix. So this is a 8 by 8 matrix where you have some numerical data. Let's say you want to copy values from this matrix over here in this particular matrix or grid. So if I simply type a formula is equal to and then select this cell. So the formula is equal to B3. If I quickly press enter, so this way this cell is actually copying the value from cell B3. And for the ease of understand, let's quickly apply this formula text function to this grid so that you get to know what's happening behind the scene, what formulas are being applied, and how they change in real time. So this formula is equal to B3 is being displayed over here. So this method of referencing a cell is basically relative reference. Now if I simply drag it across the columns, you see what happens? If I drag this formula across the columns while staying on the same row, see how formula logic changes. So in the formula itself, the column number actually gets incremented also. So as you move from column to column, the number of column, or I mean the column it's referencing in formulas, also get incremented. So from B it gets to C, D, E, F, G, H and so on. But the row number stays the same. Why? Because all these formulas applied are in the same row. So that's why row number doesn't changes, but column number gets incremented. And the same is true if I move the formula, or I mean apply formula by dragging it downwards. In this particular case, we are staying in the same column while changing the rows. As we move downward, the row number increases. So even in the formula, the row number gets incremented from B3 to B4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and so on. But because we are staying on the same column, so the column number doesn't change downwards. And if I select this whole first row and quickly drag it down, you see how formula is transferred. As we move across the columns, the column number in the formula gets incremented. B converts to C, D, E, F, G, H and I. While across the same row number doesn't change. If we move downward, you see, staying on the same column, if you move downward, the row number gets incremented. B3 converts to B4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and so on. But if you move diagonally to any cell, say this cell, E7, So now you are changing both columns and rows. So both parameters, both row number and column number gets changed. From B3 it gets incremented to column E, and from row number 3 to row number 7. So as you move diagonally, both rows and column changes. If you move horizontally, only column number changes. If you move vertically downwards, only row number changes. That's how relative referencing works. So now that you understand relative reference, let's check absolute reference. Absolute reference is another type of referencing where nothing changes. And the way you can convert a relative referencing to an absolute referencing is by putting a dollar sign ahead of both rows and column numbers. So in this grid, if I select this whole range, and you see it's actually showing the formula for the very first cell. The formula applied over here is B3, and that's what is being displayed over here. If I simply add a dollar mark before B and 3, now it's converted from relative reference to absolute reference. What this dollar sign does is it actually locks the reference. It's like putting a lock, shows you have put a lock on both row number and column number. And if I press Ctrl and enter, it automatically updates the formula for whole range. So if I simply click and Ctrl and enter, you see the formula gets updated for the whole range, because you have put a lock over the column number and row number. As you move horizontal, downward or diagonally, nothing changes because you have logged all the values. So throughout the grid, throughout the whole range, you are only referencing to the B3 cell. That's the first cell in this grid, 33. So that's why this particular value 33 gets copied over whole the grid. So that's the absolute referencing where nothing changes. And then there is a third path, what you call is mixed referencing. It's a middle path between relative and absolute referencing. So you can put lock either on columns or on rows. Let's see this one in the action. Again, if I select this whole range, and now if I simply remove this dollar sign, now you see you are only putting this lock on column numbers. So what will happen is, earlier in the relative reference, wherever column number gets incremented or changed, now it will not change because you have simply put a lock over here. If I simply press Ctrl and enter, the formula updates for whole grid. Now you see what happens. For the very first cell, it's actually B3. Earlier in the relative referencing, you move across the columns staying on the same row, the column numbers gets incremented. But now in this particular case, in the mixed referencing, you have put a lock over the column number, so that's why it's not incrementing. So it's staying the same. Throughout the whole row, it's actually referencing to column B. And because you are on the same row, the row number shouldn't get incremented at all. But while moving downward, earlier in this relative referencing, row number gets incremented and column number remains the same. And same is happening over here. Now if I alter the formula by selecting this grid and put this lock, I mean this dollar sign ahead of row number instead of column number, now you are locking only the row part, not the column one. So if you now press Ctrl enter, the whole grid gets updated, formula gets updated. Now what's happening is, the formula B$3, wherever earlier in the relative reference row number increments, that was the usually case when you move downwards, it will not get incremented because now you have put a lock. So moving downward, where it should have incremented, now it's not incrementing because you have put a lock. While moving horizontally, staying in the same row, in the relative references, column number gets incremented, and that's actually happening over here also because we have not put a lock on the columns. So in essence, in the mixed referencing, you put a lock either on the columns or on the rows, and based upon where you have put lock, that particular reference doesn't get changed whether you move horizontally or vertically, while the other one changes based upon while the other reference updates as it would have been in the case of relative references. So in essence, in the mixed reference, you either put a lock on the rows or on the columns, and depending upon whether you have put a lock on rows or column, the part where you have put a lock will not get incremented. It doesn't matter you are moving horizontally or vertically, while the other part will change as it would have been in the case of relative references. Now you know how to control your formulas instead of letting Excel control them. If this made things clearer for you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more practical Excel tutorials. I will see you in the next one.